What's the best organic green tea? In this video, we're going to find out. We'll be counting down the 10 best organic green teas and rank them by flavor, health benefits, and more. There's some interesting ones in here, like a green tea mixed with matcha powder, a tea made from the stems of the tea plant, and a tea that used to be the tea chosen by the emperor himself. Before we get started, let's first explain what we mean when we say organic tea. In Japan, there is a certification known as JAS, which stands for Japanese Agricultural Standards. If a tea carries this label, it has been determined that chemicals have not been used on the tea plant itself, and they haven't found pesticides in the soil either. So not only can the farmer not use chemicals on the tea field, it is often the case that chemicals can't even be used on the tea fields that surround it. After traveling around Japan for the past few years, we've visited dozens of tea fields, and one thing we've noticed is that the organic fields are much more full of life. They support an ecosystem of plant and animal species in between the rows of tea plants. Contrast that with the non-organic fields, which have hard, black earth and nothing but tea plants growing. Not only is this method of farming more environmentally sustainable, we also find that the teas taste better. During the taste tests, we have found that teas made with pesticides often have this unappealing flavor to them. If the pesticides are enough to impact the flavor, you can only imagine what it might do for your health. We are committed to only sourcing pesticide-free Japanese green tea at neoteas.com. We hope that by making delicious, pesticide-free green tea more accessible to people around the world, we can help transition the tea industry into a more positive direction. So without further ado, here's our pick for number 10. The Kasugaen Asatsuyu is a tea we discovered when we met with the farmer, Mr. Kawaji, in Kagoshima. On this small tea farm, he specializes in the production of deep steam teas. The steaming process is what makes Japanese green teas unique, and by treating the tea leaves with heat, it locks in the natural vegetal flavors of the leaf and prevents it from turning into a black tea. Normally, they are steamed for between 45 and 60 seconds, but deep steam teas are steamed for even longer. This steaming process breaks down the tea leaf, allowing more of it to flow into the cup, producing a vibrant jade green color and a smooth but complex flavor. The Kasugaen Asatsuyu is made from the Asatsuyu cultivar. Just like wine is broken down into different varietals, tea is broken down into different cultivars, each having its own unique flavor. The Asatsuyu is known as a light and sweet cultivar, and it's normally reserved for only premium Japanese green teas. Even though it's made from a rare cultivar, this tea comes with an affordable price tag. The color is vibrant green and the flavor is smooth, with notes of sweet corn and edamame. So next we have the Gyokuro cha Musume, a tea produced by the legendary farmer Mr. Sakamoto. Mr. Sakamoto has been growing organic tea for decades, and during this time, he has perfected his own blend of organic fertilizer. He specializes in Gyokuro teas, considered to be the most sought-after leaf teas in Japan. These used to be the tea of choice for the emperor himself, and still to this day, Gyokuro holds the nickname Emperor's Tea. The reason they are so sought after has to do with the unique, sweet and savory flavor and the thick texture. Gyokuro has a high content of amino acids, which are the result of a long shading process. The tea plant is covered in netting for 3 weeks before the harvest to reduce the bitterness and increase its sweet and savory flavor. It can be hard to keep the tea plant alive without sunlight for 3 weeks, so many farmers turn to chemicals. This is why it's so hard to find organic Gyokuro, but Mr. Sakamoto came up with an ingenious solution to produce his. By creating a mulch from sedimentary rock and organic bokashi fertilizer, he's able to grow strong, healthy tea plants without using pesticides or chemicals. The Cha Musume is his most popular organic green tea, and it's made from the Yabukita cultivar, producing a strong, savory flavor. So we've talked about the Emperor's Tea, but what about the tea mixed with matcha? That's coming up later on in the video, but for now, let's talk about the tea made from the stems of the tea plant. So normally, the stems would be something that you would discard during the tea production process. They have a much less intense flavor than the leaves, but in the case of the Kukicha Osada, that's actually a good thing. This is the tea we discovered when we met with the Osada family up in the mountains of Shizuoka. They produce their organic green teas in the so-called organic village of Isagawa. As we mentioned before, it's not only important to not use chemicals on your field, you also need to make sure that there are no chemicals being used in the surrounding fields. This group of farmers band together and made a pact not to use chemicals, ensuring all their teas could carry the JAS logo for organic green tea. This is known as a stem tea, or kukicha, and because it's made from both the stems and the leaves of the tea plant, it comes with a few advantages. First, it's lower in caffeine because the stems only contain 1/3 the caffeine compared to the leaves. This means that you can drink the tea later on in the day without being kept up at night. It also has a mild flavor with notes of straw. You can also feel a minerality on this tea, which comes from the rocky, mineral-rich soils of this region. So next we have the Henta Sencha, made by Mr. Henta in Kirishima. Although this tea farm encompasses only a few hectares, Mr. Henta is able to grow a surprising number of tea cultivars. He grows these organic green teas without the use of pesticides or chemicals, and what's even more impressive is that he's able to carefully blend together the different cultivars to create the perfect balance of flavor. The Henta Sencha is his blend of 8 different cultivars, combining the best aspects of each. This tea has a hint of sweet, a hint of citrus, a hint of savory, and a touch of that steamed vegetable flavor. In one cup, Mr. Henta is able to capture the essence of Japanese green tea without using any chemicals. So we're almost to that tea mix with matcha powder, but first let's talk about another tea from the farmer, Mr. Kawaji. So while the Kasugaen Asatsuyu is a great JAS organic green tea for beginners, the Murasaki is the more popular. Like the Asatsuyu, this is a deep steam tea, but it's even bolder and more full-bodied, with notes of papaya and other tropical fruits. This tea is made from the Yutaka Midori cultivar, which means abundant green, and if you just look at the color of the tea, you can see why. So finally, we have the Shizuku Sencha. This was a tea we discovered when we visited the farmer Mr. Naruki in Shiran, a small town in the far south of Japan. This tea was designed to be the ultimate cold brew tea, made by mixing green tea leaves with matcha powder. The matcha powder is released into the water to create a cloudy, flavorful infusion. While most teas can taste a little bit watery when you brew them cold, this tea is packed with flavor. The cold water extracts less bitterness and brings out more of the fruity characteristics of a green tea, so you end up with a delicious and refreshing drink to sip throughout the day. So to make this list of organic green teas interesting, let's add in a matcha. Our pick is the Matcha Washimine, and we have to give a shout out to the farmer, Mr. Nakai, because his father is one of the ones responsible for creating the JAS logo. While most matcha teas are quite bitter, this one is smooth and creamy because it comes from the Okumidori cultivar. The Okumidori cultivar is famous for its lack of bitterness, and it works perfectly in matcha teas. First harvest, ceremonial grade matcha like this is produced through a long, labor-intensive production process to improve the flavor even further. It's made from shade-grown, young leaves just like Gyokuro, but they have their stems removed before being carefully ground into a fine powder in a large granite mill. There's another matcha that tastes even better than the Washimine, but we'll save that for later. Now let's talk about a deep steam sencha. The Yamaga no Sato is a tea I discovered on my first trip to Japan after meeting with the farmers at Sato-en in Shizuoka. These farmers are able to produce a lot of JAS organic green teas in the mountains of Shizuoka, and our personal favorite is the Yamaga. This is another deep steam tea, so the color is super green and the flavor is bold and full-bodied. What is nice about the Yamaga is that it has a distinct fruity note to it that really comes out when the tea is cold brewed. So next we have the Nakai Superior, the top shelf matcha produced by the Nakai family in Kyoto. This tea is even smoother than the Washimine, but it still comes from the Okumidori cultivar. This is a matcha we introduced relatively recently, and while the matcha Washimine is still more popular, this is quickly becoming a fan favorite. Finally, we have the top tea on our list, the Gyokuro Cha Meijin, or the Master's Tea. This is another Gyokuro from the legendary Mr. Sakamoto, but instead of being made from the Yabukita cultivar, it's made from the rare Saimidori cultivar. Saimidori is known for producing a light and sweet flavor, and it's normally reserved for premium Japanese green teas like Gyokuro and Matcha. The Gyokuro Cha Meijin has an incredibly sweet flavor to it with notes of caramel and brown sugar. If you want to experience the pinnacle of Japanese leaf teas, this is it. We thought Sakamoto's tea was deserving of the top spot on this list of organic green teas because he's actually the president of the Kagoshima Organic Tea Growing Association, encompassing all the organic green tea growers in Kagoshima, Japan's second largest tea growing region. If you'd like to find any of the teas mentioned on this list, you can visit neoteas.com and browse our selection of the best pesticide-free green teas we found during our travels around Japan. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.